I know you have a process to go through, but I had asked, I think I talked to you, Peter. I had asked about emissions, you don't have those. They're very important to this group. We're trying to vote, so we're trying to have meetings early on. That's what starts this bickering, when you don't have answers.
My name is Jim Quigley. I'm the supervisor of the town. The purpose of this meeting is to allow GlidePath to present the project and allow the community to respond with questions, comments, whatever you have. And as I said, we will probably, from the looks of this, have a second session within the next 2 to 3 weeks. I know that there are some people that were taken back by the weather. We will accommodate them. Mr. Rood here, who is from GlidePath, has spoken to anyone who has contacted him directly, and I'm sure he will continue that. So at this point, I would like to turn this meeting over to Peter Rood from GlidePath to start the organized remarks.
Great, thanks, and definitely appreciate everyone coming out. As Supervisor quickly said, we will, given the interest here, we will have another one of these sessions. Another one of these sessions in the next coming weeks to make sure people who either couldn't come or can't hear us or have more questions have an opportunity to talk to us. Other kind of quick note is that everything you see tonight, all the slides, all of the boards that are in the back, we will have on our website, the project website, by the end of the evening. So these will all be available in the current form for you to look at, download, review at home, that sort of stuff. And so will the slides that I'm going to show tonight will be there.
Is there a reason why this is starting early? Because there may be people coming at 7
The room is at capacity, and that's why we said we'll have a second full session at a later date for whoever does show up late.
Right, so I guess real quick, because there are so many people here, I want to point out some of the safety. If there is an evacuation need, there are the 2 doors you entered through. There also is a door in the back here, and we'll make sure that if there is an evacuation that we help you out the right door. So like Chris quickly said, we are at capacity. We will make sure that we have staff here tonight to make sure that anybody comes at 7 o'clock for the presentation, gets the information, we'll provide them with information stuff, but it's a safety issue, we can't have any more folks in the room here. So, the plan for tonight is we will walk through a presentation that we have that helps orientate kind of the project details, shares what we know about the project, what we're planning, what we don't know, and provide kind of all that information at once to folks. Again, given the number of people, we don't plan to have a full-on forum Q&A after the presentation's over. We will have our staff around, and I'll point them out, and you can come ask us questions. We also have provided written cards around the room. So if you have questions that you don't get answered tonight, please write your questions down and we will respond to them. We also have our phone number and our website, and we usually call people back within 24 hours if you call or email us. I know there have been some folks who I've met tonight that have done that, and hopefully they can attest the fact that we do call people back. So if you have questions, we're not trying to avoid questions. It's just, as you can see, a lot of people and not a lot of us. And we want to make sure everybody has the time to chat with us. So that's the plan. If you have questions about what you're seeing on the slide, raise your hand. I'll try to answer them. But I do want to try to get through everything and get people on their way and make sure we have time to chat with people. Yes, ma'am.
I'm trying to phone in with the phone number that you have listed.
Yep.
And it says unavailable.
Yeah, so the postcards we sent out, we switched to 3 and a 0. So we do have a phone number. The one on the website is correct. The one on the cards here tonight is correct. The one we sent on the invitation postcards, I'll let you guess which zeros got switched, but if you try enough, one will work. But yeah, we do have a phone number. It is correct. The postcards we mailed to some people, wrong number, but we do have a real number. I promise you. It's on the website. Call it. I'll be there.
What's the phone number?
I don't know. I don't have it memorized. Chris can maybe look it up on our website. We'll share with you in a second here. It's a local number. I don't have it memorized, unfortunately. It's probably why it's here on the postcards. Okay, so tonight with the slides, here's our plan. We're going to talk about who GlidePath is, so who we are, what our company is, who we are as individuals. We're going to talk briefly about why we think the project is needed and why it's a good idea. We're going to talk about more specifically what it's going to do, so there's the need and what it does to meet that need. We're going to talk about where it is in the town, and then we'll talk about some of the potential community and environmental impacts, and we'll talk about where we are with our studies and reviews and that sort of thing. That's the plan. So GlidePath. So GlidePath Power, we're a small independent power developer, power producer, owner of power plants, formed in 2013. And the group of us that formed it, we're a relatively small company. We all come from larger, big, multinational power developers and got bored doing large wind farms, large solar projects, large natural gas projects, and wanted to do what we thought was more interesting stuff. And so we started developing battery projects in Chicago. We've taken on some aging wind projects to repower them and turn them into something better. And we've started looking at the New York market and looking at how we can bring our storage experience to the market here. And so we are a low carbon focused company. So I say low carbon, not no carbon, because we do consider certain forms of natural gas generation to be lower carbon than other forms of fossil fuels. So we're low carbon, not no carbon. And our kind of technology focus is wind, solar, energy storage, standalone energy storage, and we're calling a hybrid plant, which is energy storage combined with, again, those high efficiency gas generators. And that's who we are. That's kind of our mission. We're based out of Chicago. I personally live in Minneapolis. We have some other folks in Michigan, but that's kind of where our staff is at. Again, here's the map. So our current portfolio is just over 300 megawatts of projects completed. About 80 megawatts are battery, set of 4 battery projects in the Chicago area. And then we do own a portfolio of 6 wind projects, 4 in Pennsylvania, 1 in West Virginia, and 1 in California. So 304 megawatts total, about 10 projects. We have active development like this project kind of throughout the U.S., New York, and some other states, but those are the ones we've completed.
When you have battery up there, are they all frac gas-based batteries like this one?
Those batteries do not use any gas.
So this is the only one that is frac-based gas in the hybrid?
This is the only one that uses gas that we've developed.
Frac.
Well, yes.
Frac.
Wait, say that again? We are going to be the only time that uses this hybrid gas here in New York?
It's a new technology.
So this is your project, so this is really like guinea pig project.
That's not, so both of these technologies are very developed technologies. The gas generation system has been used for a century probably. This is the first.
But my question is, this is the first time gas hybrid is being used.
This is the first time.
For your company that's only been in operations for 4
Ma'am, can I ask a question? Please allow GlidePath to finish the presentation. There's a lot of people in the room. There's a lot of people in the room. There's a lot of pictures.
We were supposed to start at 6 o'clock, have an hour presentation.
If you wait until he finishes.
This is pretty important.
Ask the questions when he finishes.
No, we want to ask it as he's presenting it, so we have it fresh. Why you gonna wait an hour afterwards? You don't know what you want to ask him. We want to ask him as he's presenting.
So
I believe, sir, excuse me, I
Mr.
believe
Quigley,
you
with all due
prefaced your
respect to all
whole,
the residents.
your whole presentation with, please interrupt me if you see something on the board. Did you not say that? Did you not say that for us to interrupt when we saw something to ask at that point? Correct?
That's a statement I said, yes.
Yes.
So here, we're trying to help communicate about our project. If we can't get past the 4th slide, it's going to be difficult for us to communicate all of the information that we think is important. There are a lot of people here.
This is very important to us to do.
The fact that it's frac gas is pretty important.
There are a lot of people here. I want to respect everyone's time. I also want to ask everybody's questions. The questions been asked are very good questions. We're not trying to not answer them. I'm happy to spend all night here today. I'm happy to spend all day tomorrow, all day the next day answering questions. But I think it's reasonable for us to work through the presentation so that people who don't have your questions can either have their questions answered or can go on with their night. So if you don't mind, we would like to get through the presentation, and then we can address your questions. We're providing opportunities for you to write them down, providing opportunities for you to contact us afterwards, or you can stay and talk to us about the project.
Excuse me,
That's what we'd like to do.
I'd just like to say, I thought between 6 and 7, we were supposed to find out about what was the, you know,
So the plan for the evening was
you're
that,
gonna do your presentation.
Ma'am, you're right. You're right. I made a call. I made a judgment call. The room is at capacity. We can't fit any more people in.
That doesn't have anything to do with what we're asking.
Please, can I finish? Can I address Can I address
No.
her question? I can't address her
No,
question.
because it's not affecting you. It is affecting us.
All of us.
All of us here have a voice to speak and ask questions per slide.
Ma'am, did I answer your question?
Well, I thought that between 6 and 7, we were gonna come and get informed.
And then we're
And
gonna
then we can ask questions, but we need to be informed.
Part of being informed is allowing them to do their presentation.
Well, I thought that was at 7.
so we can do it again. I mean,
Ask questions.
the issue is we also, I mean, we want to make sure everyone's safe, and so we can't put more people in this room.
What does that have to do with it? We got the people here asking questions. We're not asking about the people outside who didn't come. We
No,
want to ask questions.
We're going to
tonight.
answer your questions. I want to get through the presentation first.
All right, I thought you were doing it at 7, so we shouldn't ask questions.
You can ask questions. We're trying to move through this because there are a lot of people here who want to share the information. We're not trying to avoid your questions. We'll answer your questions all night. I'll set up in my car and sleep there tonight if you guys want to ask questions all night long. We're trying to do that. We're trying to be efficient and get through all this information. Some of your questions may be answered in the presentation.
A frame of reference.
Yes.
You said you're going to come back, or Supervisor Quigley said you'll come back in about 3 weeks and hold another meeting.
Yes.
But you'll give us advance warnings.
Yes.
And you'll have set up a Q&A and a facility sufficient to handle all of the people who will be there.
We'll try. Yes. We'll try.
Correct.
Well, you can't try. If you're gonna have 500 people, you gotta have a place to put them. You can't get 1,000 people here and then you got no place to put them.
So
Like
I
you made a
don't want-
judgment call and it's already wrong.
Right.
There ain't enough room for anybody.
Right.
Town Hall has a capacity of about 150 people. Now, if you're telling me right now, I need to go get Miller Middle School with 600 seats. Okay. Well, then we'll do that for the next meeting. But the purpose of this meeting, which was originally designed for the people in the Risley Street, Sunrise Park neighborhood, those were the ones that were directly communicated with by letter.
We're all here. We're doing here. If we're not part of those communities, I mean, come on now.
So, go ahead.
Okay.
We're gonna have to breathe the emissions in Ripton.
All right. So, enough about us, I guess. So the project. So I'm gonna try to provide a very brief overview of the New York energy system. It's going to be very condensed. It's going to be very simple. I understand some people in this room may know a lot more about it. Some maybe know a lot less. But this is intended to help frame the next few slides about why we think the project's a good idea. So the energy system, the utility system, is made up of 3 primary components. There's capacity, which is the idea that when you want to turn your lights on, the lights will turn on. There's the energy, which is the generation, the power that makes the lights actually turn on. And then there's the services that keep the grid operating in an efficient and technically correct way. Basically make sure your lights don't blow up or aren't dim when they turn on. So those are the 3 major components of the energy system. It's far more complex than that, but these are the 3 basic components. Our project is focused on 2 of them. We're focused on capacity and we're focused on services. We are not, even though we generate energy, we are not focused on primarily generating energy. There are lots of projects out there that generate energy and that's their primary focus. Our focus is providing capacity, which means that we serve as the provider of last resort. So when there isn't, other power plants are not generating and there's demand for more energy, we are one of the plants that can come online very quickly, provide that energy, and when it's no longer needed, shut down. And we provide services that make sure the grid can do what it's supposed to do within a very tight technical timeline. So I'll talk about, or technical specifications. So I'll talk about those a little more in a second here. But that's really maintaining power quality, through ever-changing conditions, because the grid's always changing. There we go. So, there are several reasons why this project's needed. And one of them, obviously there's a lot of interest in this room on reducing fossil fuels. We think that's a good idea as well. Our entire careers, my personal entire career has been focused on low carbon generation technology. Chris's entire career has been focused on that. We believe in that. What we're looking to do with this project is make stepwise progress to reducing the need for fossil fuels. So the services we're providing, capacity, frequency regulation, reserves, are all currently being provided for the most part in New York by coal and natural gas plants. What we're proposing to do is develop a much more efficient project that provides those same services with significantly less carbon or CO2 emissions. Not zero, but less. And we think that's progress in the right direction for reducing the overall carbon emissions of the grid. And the way the market works in New York is that our project will, by the way the system's designed, displace those more expensive, higher carbon projects. The other things that we do, somewhat as an addition to that, is because we're able to provide what are called frequency regulation services, we can help integrate variable generation, which for the most part is renewables like wind and solar. They're variable generation because it's difficult to predict at any moment exactly how much energy they're going to provide, and they are often changing their energy output, which means that the grid has to accommodate for that change, because when a wind turbine ramps down or a cloud goes over a solar facility, there's not an equivalent amount of lights that turn off, or not an equivalent amount of dishwashers that turn off. And when the sun comes up and solar projects start generating, there's not a one-for-one turning on of air conditioning. So the grid operator has to balance all of that. And it's very challenging. And right now, the easiest, most common way they balance it is by throttling up and down existing combined cycle natural gas plants. They also do it with hydro, which is obviously zero carbon, but most of it in New York is done by throttling up and down existing natural gas plants. So with our project, we help add more renewables to the system because we provide those services and we do it lower carbon. Not zero, but lower carbon. It's also, because we're a distributed plant, we believe that in the long run, as our project is built and as several other projects across the state are built, we'll reduce the need for new transmission lines. And those transmission lines bring energy from where it's generated, which historically has been big 1,000 megawatt, 2,000 megawatt power plants, bring it to where it's needed across the state. And with distributed generation, instead of having big centralized generation, you spread the plants out around the system, and you don't need to transmit the power as far. So that's alternative power lines. And the last thing is, all of this, we have an eye towards doing it at a competitive price. In the end, the way the power grid, the way your utility, the way the grid operator called New York ISO decides which power plants run and which ones don't run, in the end, it's an economic decision. The most inexpensive power plants start first, and then they ramp up. So renewables are often the lowest cost because wind is often actually below zero from a price standpoint, and solar is often zero because the fuel is free. So those are always, renewables are usually taken up very early on, but as you start ramping up the curve, you need to make sure, the grid operator has a duty to make sure that they're selecting the lowest cost of energy. And so we think we can provide all of these services at a lower cost than the companies that are providing the services today. So those are the four things that we think it's needed. Quick questions?
Yeah, I just have some clarification. So you started off your PowerPoint presentation by saying that you were an on-demand, that you would power on and power off.
Yes.
So that's different than replacing aging and inefficient providers. How do those two go hand in hand? How do you replace, if you're an on-demand provider, how does that coalesce with replacing aging and inefficient providers? Replacing an aging and inefficient provider would seem that you're going to take over that role, which would require you to be more than an on-demand supplier.
So, yeah, so let me clarify. We're replacing, so the services that we're talking about providing, frequency regulation, spinning reserves, and capacity, those services aren't new services. Those have been around since the beginning of the power system. And what I'm talking about is we're displacing the providers of those services, which are currently older, in many cases, older and less flexible plants. So we're not talking about displacing operating generators that provide energy that turn the lights on. I'm talking about displacing the providers of those services that I mentioned.
Okay, which were again?
Frequency regulation.
What was that? What is that?
Frequency regulation.
Frequency regulation, okay.
Yeah, which is balancing the second by second up and down, with the lights on and off. As
So again, and they do that by an on-demand basis?
They do that by throttling their generation, for the most part.
Okay, so how do you determine when you're going to be doing this activity?
So we'll be participating in the exact same market they're participating in. So there's a frequency regulation market that's operated by the New York ISO. We will be participating in that, competing head to head with those other providers. And because we're faster and because we're going to have a lower cost, we will win and they won't. And so we'll be selected to provide the services and they won't.
Peter, this was a peaker project, right? So it would address more peak needs, and hence the competition.
That's the capacity. So we're providing several services. One is capacity, peak and capacity.
Right. And if you're as good as you say you are, and in the proposal, or at least in the environmental assessment form, it says that this plant would operate during peak periods or possibly 24/7. So if you're that good, it would be running all of the time.
So here's the deal. So we will be providing services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Many of those services don't require us to be running at full output all the time. Sometimes we have to be running it all and still providing the service, because the service is the fact that we're there, not that we're actually generating. Sometimes we'll provide the services that we're not operating at all. Sometimes we'll be absorbing power with our batteries and not generating at all. We'll be actually consumer power. Other times we'll be generating full output. We are studying the project from an emission standpoint, from a sound standpoint, from anything that matters standpoint, as operating 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at full output. And so for those purposes, I would encourage you, and I'm telling the town, to encourage you to assume we're going to operate 24 hours a day. I'm not trying to say that we're not planning to operate 24 hours a day, because there are some days when we will. And so I think for things like emissions and sound and those sorts of things, that is the proper assumption, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. What I'm sharing with you now is what we think our business plan is for the project, which is not to do that.
I mean, the reality of the situation is you profit from being on the most that you can.
We profit from being available, not on.
So
No, that's not, sorry, real quick, that's not how it works.
Yes,
Capacity.
The only way that you're going to profit from this project is by creating electricity.
That's not accurate.
Well, then explain to me how it is.
So in New York, there is a capacity market. So plants get paid for existing and being ready to go, not for operating. That's one of our key sources of revenue, is that capacity market. We're getting paid to exist and be available and not committed.
I just want, so what is the percentage of you're gonna just build a plant, and what if you're not even needed to be operated? If we don't,
So what I'm saying
you
is
just said you might not have to operate 24/7.
So there are markets.
So you're gonna sit there and not be operating at all?
Yeah, and we'll get paid.
Well, that doesn't make any sense, because that means you don't need it there.
So I
How-
think this is one of the things that we're most confused and have the most questions
Yep.
about, is how much of the time you think that gas portion of the plant is going to be running.
So
If it's running 24/7, your emissions are a lot higher than 195 pounds per megawatt hour. This
No.
must be your hybrid emissions rates.
no, that's our full 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 65.
Per unit of electricity generated by the gas. So it's 195 pounds per megawatt hour. So that's
You're producing 20 of them. So multiply that number by 20.
Wait, yes.
If I can clarify, if you multiply this number by 20, you have to multiply this number by 20. Because this is a unit comparison. For every megawatt hour that we're reducing coal output, you're replacing it with 1 megawatt hour of this. So it scales based on how much.
And regardless, there's not a power plant there right now. So anything that you're producing is extra from what it is now.
We don't have a coal plant next door.
This is all extra. I don't care how low it is, it's all extra.
We'll move on, if you don't mind, move on. This is clearly this is new. So we are adding generation to the system. We are adding capacity to the system. We're adding regulation services to the system. We believe the way the market works, that we will displace other providers. It'll take a long time to work through all of this. I'm not trying to minimize your concerns, but I want to move on.
You're adding fossil fuel infrastructure.
We are. We're adding more efficient
New York
fossil.
State and Ulster County is committed to not adding fossil fuel infrastructure, yet you're coming into our community, into our state, and you're telling us now that we need you to put in increased fossil fuel infrastructure. 50,000 gallon diesel tank and frack gas. That is not what New York voters have asked for from their government and from their legislators. Ulster County is committed to it and New York State is committed to it. Why would we not want fracking in New York State and be okay with it coming from other states?
So she's 100% right.
Exactly.
She's 100% right.
Yeah.
That's so.
We don't even need it.
Right.
There's no need for it. We don't
Can you
even
show us a proposal that doesn't use emissions, an alternative to this idea?
We don't think there's a commercial proposal that works.
Well,
And why
here's
is
our
that?
answer.
Why is, we don't think it's competitive.
Here?
Yeah. If that's, like, so that slide is in here. If I can move on eventually.
Let me ask you just one quick question. You classify yourself as a power plant distribution plant. What other, that's what you said, this power plant with this energy that you are producing, to what services, to what area? Like,
So it's-
where's your range?
Yeah, what area?
Yeah,
And
so-
what service, like right now we use, in this area, it's Central Hudson.
Yeah.
Downstate, it's Orange and Rockland. So who's gonna buy this service and what is your radius?
So New York operates a wholesale power market that's operated by the New York Independent System Operator. So we will sell services into the New York, that market, and they will be the one that pays us.
Now, have you
Central-
already done your marketing to know what companies out there would be interested in getting your services?
They don't match one for one. So they're not a clearinghouse. They don't match us with Central Hudson. They buy the
understand, but you
service.
have to do your own marketing research before you start doing this. So in your marketing research, did you figure out who within this area would be interested in your services?
Yeah. The only person that can buy our services, the only entity that can buy our services is the New York ISO. We're a wholesale generator. They're the only ones in New York that are allowed to buy the services.
And are they willing or interested in buying your services?
Yes, they're obligated to buy them. It's an auction process. So anybody can participate by law. It's an open market. Anyone can participate. And you bid. It's a merit system. And so they award it to the lowest cost participant for that increment. So they run a market. There's several different products that they operate, that they clear, and there's different ways of doing it. But yes, that's exactly why we're here. And that is why we're in this part of New York, is because this is the area where the New York ISO has sent price signals saying that this sort of plant is required.
So you're required in a residential area? I mean, I don't understand why you're required.
So I will get to why we chose the site shortly, if we can eventually move on.
Can I ask one more question? You're interested, you said you would monopolize, you would win the bid, so to say. So that would put your company in control, and what's to say you're not going to astronomically raise our rates and expand yourself?
So I didn't say that.
You didn't have to say that.
So let me clarify. So we're only 20 megawatts. The New York ISO clears gigawatts, so thousands of megawatts every day, all the time. So we're not going to be a market changer. We think what they'll do is they stack up all of the providers, and they start at the bottom and they start picking out the cheapest ones until they get to all the ones they need. So we think that will be someplace in that stack where we'll get picked up and somebody else won't. And that's what I'm saying. Not that we're going to change or influence the market. Question about this same topic?
Yeah, shout this out, because I know you don't really have the capacity to call on people who have their hands up. So two questions. One is, are you aware that when you look at greenhouse gas cradle to grave, and you compare coal to methane, the current science shows, starting with studies in 2010 that show that frack gas is worse than coal for climate. But this is 8 years later, and we have a lot of science showing that the cradle to grave emissions from frack gas are clearly worse than coal for climate. So it looks like your graphs are maybe operating as if we're using the 100-year time frame. But when you look at the 20-year time frame, methane is much worse than coal, so CH4 is worse than CO2 for climate. EPA says 86 times worse. NASA scientist Richard Schindel says 105 times worse, but it's a lot worse. So that's
we're
one
using
concern.
the EIA data, which is a standardized set of data for power plants. This is part of the form discussion that came from. I understand there's different
Right.
mechanisms associated, cradle grade stuff. So I acknowledge that there's different approaches to calculating it.
Vastly different.
Yeah, we're using the EIA data, which is typically used for power plants. That's what we're using.
Okay.
That's just for tonight. That's what we're
So
doing.
just so you know, I guess the question is, are you aware that that's outdated and?
I'm aware that there are other ways of calculating the CO2 emissions from different sources of energy. You can, people can calculate that wind turbines have a CO2 footprint, all this stuff. So for the purpose of being consistent, and what we'll use for our permitting is the EIA data, which is what the industry uses.
So you're using that data, but just so everyone in the room understands, 20-year time frame is life and death. So we're in climate change right now, we're in climate chaos.
I hear you, thank
right?
you.
People are dying, so this is not a
So, okay.
Thank you.
not just a statistic.
Larger picture
The other
is-
question someone else tried to ask, and we would like a more detailed answer, is could you use solar or any other kind of renewable energy to generate rather than
So we don't think that we can achieve the project objectives with a renewable paired project.
Why?
You're not
bidder at that point.
What's that?
You're not gonna.
That's right.
Exactly.
We don't think it's economically viable.
Maybe we can find another company that will.
Go across the street, use the transfer station in the county. They got all solar, all set.
Okay, can we move on? I mean, that's the thing, is we're a private company, we are making economic decisions, we think that this is the most economic choice.
We
for
live
people.
here, we live here.
In moving on, are you going to show us more marketing slides to tell us how wonderful the energy is and how wonderful the project is?
No, I'm gonna tell you about the project when I get there.
Because I'll be honest with you, you're talking to a room full of people who
just
really
want
don't feel like we need this.
Yeah.
Our lights come on. I've lived in a bunch of different places. This is the best place
Yep.
for electricity that I've ever lived. If we lose power, I live on Risley Street. If we lose power for an hour.
Yeah.
And that's it. Oh, we have no problems at all. So you're talking to a group of people who don't care about every slide you show.
This isn't even needed.
I know
Wait, so
you
you don't have it.
I know you want to set the base and tell us how great it all is and how clean it is and all that. We're not really too interested in how you're going to help the grid, because you're not helping us. When you say you're going to help the grid, you're not helping us. The only thing that your company's going to do to us is hurt us.
Hurt our health.
So,
You
can skip it. The next slides are all marketing and stuff like that. Just skip it and let's get to how it's going to affect us. Because that's all we care about.
So, this is not a decision-making meeting. We are here to share information.
And we're
gather-
sharing with you.
And we're sharing it with you.
Can I finish my sentences, please? This is there's a lot of people here. I understand that some people in this room do not want this project. Give everybody. We're trying to share. So we're trying to
Wait, okay, really not gonna happen.
So we're trying to share information about it, so at least you have all the facts that we believe are true.
But you're telling us we don't have a choice.
I'm not saying that.
Did you already buy the land?
No.
Thank God. Don't buy it.
Your school lost
So-
$100,000 on it.
So, I'm sharing information on the project. We are what we consider the planning stage. So we are making decisions on the project, we're gathering feedback. We're not making a decision about whether or not to build a project here tonight. There's not a town decision being made tonight. We have to go through all the permitting processes, and that is, if you've already made your mind, you don't want the project, that I think is where you would share your opinion about that and let the people who make that decision, make that decision. We already believe this is a good project for this site.
Who would come spend time in our neighborhood? We need to come and sit and have a cup of coffee and look around our neighborhood and see where we live and there's kids around and where these things are going to be built. We don't want it. We don't need it.
Okay.
Real quick, Peter. This is regarding a cost benefit analysis. Now I have a fuller understanding of how it would benefit your company and how you could be economically competitive by doing it. So I get that. What's the economic benefit to the town of Ulster?
So we'll be a property taxpayer. And
Bail on us and then you'll get it.
Go ahead.
Hey, the meeting is up here, folks.
so we'll be property taxpayer. There are incentives available for some equipment we'll use, so there'll be, it won't be pure property tax. We haven't calculated that yet, and when we do, we'll share it. But yeah, we'll be, that is, there's not separate payments that we're proposing right now.
Tax credits, anything like that, that's all the...
There'll be, I don't think so we've worked with that there, I mean, there's not a hybrid battery gas tax credit for some reason in Ulster County, surprisingly. So there's not, so I think we'll pay some property taxes. We haven't figured out what we do, we'll share it. But we're looking right now at what property tax rates apply. I think I'd be lying to you if I said we're not looking for incentives we can use, but if they're there, we'll take advantage of them. If they're not, we think the project works.
So the only benefit to the town would be the taxes.
So so I mean, the direct financial benefit is the taxes, yeah. I think there's a couple of things that we've agreed to do already with the town. We've agreed to designate Project Forever Green, so the remainder of the property won't be developed. We're looking at doing some water line improvements in the area, but that's all minor. I think that we got a broader argument about, or broader discussion about some of the less direct benefits. I don't think it's going to be efficient right now, but I'm happy to have it with those who are interested afterwards. But I think that's not going to.
Sir, with all due respect, would you put your family in this development?
Yeah.
And live here with your children?
100 feet behind the nearest.
Well, we're close to townhouses for sale.
All right, here we go forward. All right, so we also think that we've hit several energy goals. I'm just going to leave this up here because we've already had some of these conversations in the group here, but we think that despite some of the things in the room, we think that there are several of the stated energy goals in New York State that we help progress. Not all the way to the fulfilling, but we think our project does align with the state's stated energy policy. Obviously, that's open to interpretation. Okay.
How does putting something that doesn't currently exist bring a 40% reduction when you're adding to?
Because we're displacing, so our thesis, and I think there's people here don't agree, so we're happy to, after this, I think it's efficient to have the conversation because I think everyone knows what people think. But we think, our view is that we're displacing less efficient, more carbon-intensive providers of the same services. So when we are on, the other providers are not. That's our view, and that's how we think that
Where are the other providers?
It's a whole mix across New York. It's difficult to point to individual providers.
They're in other places, they're not here.
They're not next to where we're building the project. No, that's right.
But then is that assuming you're going to be on more? Because if you're supposed to be backup, that seems to make us believe that you want to be on more, then it will be more than a backup.
So this, and I think there are many services that are important to the grid that don't require a generator to actually be operating. In fact, you get paid to be available to operate if there is a grid event that requires you to come online very quickly. And so a lot of the services that we're providing, yeah.
I mean, I've got an analogy that might help drive that point home, is that it's like paying for a security service. What the grid pays generators like ours for, and the existing set of generators, is the security of being able to turn on if load goes up. And if everybody turns on air conditioners, turns on lights.
Did you hear us before? We're not interested in that. That doesn't affect us.
Some people might be. We're trying to
understand that. But you're not building it in your backyard.
So to continue that analogy,
doesn't matter.
a security service doesn't get paid by the crown. It gets paid a fee to be there in case it's needed. And that's the way this facility works, and that's the way that other higher carbon emitting.
That's what I don't understand, is it needed? That's what I'm saying. You keep saying when it's there when we need it.
So there are current plans, that what we're saying is that there are current plans that are providing this service right now.
So build next to them.
There are current plans that provide, yeah, there are current plans that provide this service right now. We think that we can do it more efficiently because we're going to be doing with less fuel, and so we'll displace those current providers. It's not new demand for this service, it is that we are a more efficient, lower cost way of doing it.
You know, I'm just trying to be honest. I mean, I lived here for almost 25 years now in the same house, and I've never had a problem with air conditioning going down, lights going down.
That's because people are buying these services.
So
that's the thing, is that the reason that doesn't happen, the reason the grid is so reliable is because the grid operator procures And it has these services in their control system.
And is currently purchasing that from 50, 60, 70-year-old power plants that are going to be shut down, that are going to have events that cause them to be shut down, are uneconomic and higher carbon producing.
I just want to put this project in context, which you're not mentioning, but your project is here because a couple of years ago, in 2015, the FERC approved a new capacity zone for Central Hudson Service Territory for what's called Zone G, our zone. And what that did was fold our area into the capacity zone of the more populated areas downstate that use a lot more energy, that have a much bigger peak demand, and essentially we all fought it. Our municipalities all opposed that. The Public Service Commission sued the FERC, tried to get it overturned. But what it essentially does is pay these guys a lot more money to come into our territory to provide capacity. We don't believe we need that right here in our area. Is all serving to reduce peak demand downstate where the population center is.
Well, that's where they should build it, like you say. We don't need it here.
Yeah, exactly.
Build it over there where they're using it.
We're cheap, that's why.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
We're cheap.
Wait,
So, yeah.
wait, hold on 1 second. Could you please go back? I want to hear your interpretation of how you're supporting these energy goals. Some of us have studied energy pretty carefully for the last decade. So how do you explain that?
So
Please.
I'm going to explain it. And what I would request is that if we want to have a discussion about our interpretation.
I just want to hear what you have to say.
So just to make sure you keep moving on. I'll explain why we think we meet all four of these. And
No,
then I
I
will
want
stick
you
around.
to explain how your project is going to impact
So
this.
I'm going to explain that. And then what I'm saying is that I'll do that here and then we're going to move on. And if you want discussions about it, we can do it after, because we just think people.
That's fine.
So, there is a recently enacted energy storage target. Governor Cuomo signed it late last year. We're building energy storage. We help advance that target. That's that one. Renewable energy generation. So there's 50% renewable energy target in New York, 50% by 2035. When you add intermittent generation, wind, solar, it increases what's called the control error, which is the ups and downs of the grid. And so when you add renewable generation, the changes, the variable changes in output require more frequency regulation service, which is one of the services we're providing. The other thing is that renewables, there's great algorithms to schedule when wind or when solar is going to come online, but they're not perfect. And what often happens is the forecasting error results in the grid operator planning to have a 300 megawatt or 200 megawatt wind project online at 9 a.m. or more likely 9 p.m., but the wind doesn't show up at 9 p.m. because the wind doesn't work that way. And so what they do is when they plan to have that wind project on at 9 p.m. and it's not there, they have to find alternative sources to meet that load. But a lot of those alternative sources require a certain amount of startup time, and once they're started, they have to run for a certain period of time before they can be shut down. And so then when the wind does show up at 9, 10 p.m., they have this other generation resource working, and they have the wind, and they have to find more solutions to that problem.
That's not entirely true, though. There's tons of large-scale utility battery levels that can.
So I'm simplifying here. I'm trying to explain this. Like I said, happy to have discussions. The grid is very complex. You can take classes that go on for semesters about how the grid works. That's not tonight. So I'm trying to simplify. You're right. There is ways you can do it with batteries. You could do it with pumped hydro. You could do it with fancy aeroderivative turbines. There's lots of ways to do it. Our way is one way of doing it. But we think that problem exists, and we think we're offering a solution. And finally, there we go. Finally, we're offering grid resiliency. So we think that in times when there is problems with the grid, that Central Hudson could call on us to provide local microgrid services by powering the feeders, the distributions that we're connected to. So we can, because we can operate independently, we don't need to have the grid to make our facility operate. That's when we meet those objectives. I move on now. Happy to answer questions afterwards. I understand there's questions and interpretations of that, but that's my view of how we meet those objectives. So, here's the details about the project. Now that we're kind of past why we're doing this. It's going to be, we're planning two major components. We're planning the battery system and the reciprocating engine system. The batteries we're planning to use are most likely lithium-ion batteries. There's various types of lithium-ion batteries, and we're still working through the exact type. But lithium-ion batteries, same basic technology that's in a cell phone or a laptop computers. Batteries are
blow up and catch on fire constantly. It's all over the news. They burn up constantly.
So batteries, that's what we're using. This is a picture of our Jake energy storage facility in Chicago. This is an operating battery project. We're planning to use similar batteries to this, not this exact design, but similar.
Did you build that facility in people's backyards in Chicago?
The Jake energy facility is not. The Elwood facility is about 100 foot from the neighborhood.
And how did those people react?
We have not heard any complaints.
Oh, I can't. No complaints. Are you in the middle of when people are kind of getting high and shot?
Yeah, I have another slide, so I'll answer that question, but it's in a future slide. Okay, so that's that. The batteries are containerized. There are batteries in racks in there. The question about fires, there is, like everything is not perfect, so there is potential for a fire. So we prevent that is there is an internalized fire prevention system that has multiple components. One is that the battery cells are separated from one another, and then there is a fire extinguishing system in the container itself to extinguish a fire. And then, as you can see, they're on this gravel pad, so that if both of those fail, the fire may be contained.
How big are the buildings?
These are 40-foot shipping containers. We're planning to have anywhere from 9 to 11 of them. I don't know where that question came from. Those are the batteries.
And we have them all in ours.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
Those are the batteries. So that's the battery system. There's an inverter system. There's other subcomponents that we're happy to walk through on our drawings, but that's the basic battery system.
And what kind of a strain is that going to run on our fire department if there should be a problem?
I don't think there'll be any. And
Famous last words.
well, I mean, so we haven't done the study. So one of the things we're planning to study is fire prevention, fire response.
And the chemicals that you would use to put that fire out, should there be a fire, what kind of impact is that going to have on us?
It's a halon system, and it's
Oh,
contained in
that's
a
just
container.
wonderful. That stuff makes you walk up off the floor by just sniffing a bunch of it.
That's why
We won't be high in the neighborhood. We won't be high in the neighborhood. Hey, maybe we need that.
So I can't. I'm Christine goes, so I can't hear you.
Other than proposing to put this in a residential area, there is a school in close proximity. Has this been discussed at all with the school board at all?
So this
to
is the
know?
same sort of system that's in data rooms, computer
That's not my
centers.
question, it's a yes or no question.
So we have
This is the proximity of a school. You've already answered the fire department question, you haven't even discussed it with them. You don't even know how this impacts with our water department. What about with the school?
So we have not discussed with the school. We're happy to look into that as part of our study plans, though. And if you put on a question card, I'll make sure we do it.
I just find it a little disheartening that this has been presented to the board, to our town supervisor. I only knew about it through a newspaper article in December.
Right, it was very secret.
Okay, it was, yes. But then when I'm sitting here, I ask about your marketing, we think. I ask you about these other agencies, these other communities. Well, we haven't yet. Give us these questions. I have to think either you have the answers to them. I can't see a company, any company, your company or any other company, propose and put in something and not having a full marketing background to know whether or not it is doable, viable, and anything in the community is going to be affected.
So,
I mean, don't laugh, sir. Okay, I'm a layman. I'm a homeowner in that area. Blood, sweat, and tears went into my home.
Yeah,
You
so-
proposing this into the community is not only going to affect us in so many ways that you have to understand and appreciate. We are here with many questions, whether they're annoying questions to you or illiterate questions to you. This is
They're-
us.
They're not.
We
So,
need to
so
address it.
my reaction there was not to your questions. So this is it's somewhat of a catch-22. We either approach the community early on, sharing what we know, what we don't know, ask for feedback, or we do all of our research, spend a bunch of money developing a project, and show up when it's all fully baked and say, here's how it's going to have to be.
But don't you think that's a better presentation and you make people feel more comfortable, like you have more knowledge behind what
I think some people, we're going to do both, right? The purpose today is to gather initial feedback so that when we can still economically have chances to make changes to the project, we can still do it.
How are we coming across so far?
I have a few more slides. I'm sure I can convert the rest of you into a few more slides here.
Trying to get us to change our opinion, right?
No, I mean, this is.
I think it's over.
So this, no, I mean, this is feedback, right? Like this is, I mean, we're gonna think about.
We're trying to tell you something.
Save
your money.
I think, I'm hearing it. I think, so.
Save your time, and save your commute from Minnesota.
So we think, so this is all, so this is the feedback we're looking for. Clearly there are people who have concerns with the project, there are people who don't like the project. We want to see those questions we can answer, we want to see those changes we can make, and we plan to answer the questions, make the changes we can, and continue to talk. And if at the end of the day the town decides it's not the right project for the right spot, we're not going to move forward. But we think that it's worth a discussion. And that's what we're trying to have. We're trying to start the discussion, have the discussion now, and we think it's worth having. We think this is how development ought to work, is that when a project idea comes forward, we tell you what we know, we tell you what we don't know, we tell you what we're planning, we hear the feedback, and we react to that feedback. And that's what we're doing tonight. So we don't know all the answers, we want to hear the questions, we want to hear the concerns, we want you to give us time to answer the questions, react to them, make changes, and we'll see where we go from there. That's the plan. So that's what we're doing tonight.
Have you looked at other properties, or is this the first property?
This is the site we have here, yeah. This is the one.
Have you looked at any other sites?
In Ulster, Town of Ulster, no.
Right, that's not in a residential area?
This is-
There's a lot of property right here, I'm sure if you look at the tax map, that you could go.
So I have a slide early on about, or later on about why we chose this site, and I'll explain those, respond to that there. So here's a schematic of how the thing works. So this is the engineering schematic. I'm going to go through it quick. This will be available on the website for you to look at, ask questions about. But basically the way it works is this is the facility right here, this box. We're connected to the Central Hudson electric system, with the electric line right there. We're using the existing right-of-way. So one of the reasons we chose the site we have is because there's existing right-of-way infrastructure coming to the site. We don't have to build new linear facilities. That's that. And the site also has grid-supplied gas, so there's a gas line on the site. So the site has both gas and electric on site, so we can use those two resources that are there on the property. And then we'll have an on-site backup fuel, which is ultra-low sulfur diesel. It's on the plans, and that's the backup fuel. So when the gas is disrupted, we'll be using the backup fuel. So those are the power inputs and outputs, electric out, and this stuff in. We have a control system, a master control system that'll operate the entire project, both the batteries and the engines. They'll work together as a system, and we'll have a master controller that tells the system what to do. And the inputs to that are instructions from the grid operator, so from New York ISO. They will tell us what to do. Once we put our project into the market and open it up to them, they're the ones who give us instructions and tell the project what to do. Turn on, turn off, operate, stand by, whatever the right decision is. That's what the grid operator does. And one of the inputs to that grid operator is the pricing of the project, which I talked about earlier about the auction process and stacking resources. That's all part of that math of how that works. That's the schematic. So then the batteries and engines are there together. The batteries obviously can go both ways. They can charge and discharge. The engines can run at full or partial load. We're planning to have 2 engine sets, each about 10 megawatts. And so they can operate independently. They can both operate. They can not operate at all. And they can both be controlled. They can go up and down and operate that way. And they'll be all connected through a set of transformers that match the project voltage to the grid. Yes?
In terms of the grid supplied gas, there is talk of a compressor station in the Washington Avenue area of Kingston. Does this project necessitate that? Because the neighbors there are very concerned about that.
So we're not involved with that project at all. I don't think that this project would make or break a compressor station. We're pulling off the existing grid. We're using interruptible gas, so we're not creating firm gas demand. I mean, obviously, every time you add a stove to the gas system, you add enough of those, there's more gas demand. So there will be, broad demand, but we're not locking in gas requirements for our project.
The gas is going up to 100-foot
smokestacks, right?
No, 80 foot, 60, 80 feet, so with the project.
80 feet, okay.
Well, they said 100 previously.
So the original application said 100. We've heard feedback that that's not ideal, so we're working to reduce them. Right now, we can commit to being no taller than 80, and we're looking for to be closer to 60. On our site, the trees are about 70 foot tall. So right now, we're hoping we can get below the trees, at least to 70 feet, if not lower.
But we're still going to be breathing the emissions, whether we can see them or not. And
So
I
I'm
just
gonna-
would like to comment on the process here. And also, I do have a question, it's related to the town and taxes. I just want to say that, you know, you're involved in doing a presentation, and many of us have stopped listening because, you know, we're not on board with this. So, you know, if I were working for this company, I might have to go back and tell my boss, this community didn't even let me finish the presentation.
Right.
And what does that say? So that's number one. And also what I'd like to say about what you've shown on these beautiful things that you've compiled is you've shown, you know, solar panels, you've shown wind panels, you've used the word hybrid, you've used the words reduction of emissions. Number one, we don't have any emissions going on right now, and this is not a solar or wind panel project. So it feels a little bit sometimes like a shell game to us because we're not being told the full truth. So that's my observation about what's going on here. Secondly, I'm wondering, and the only other thing I have to say is, what does the town have to gain about this? These are 3 taxable parcels, I understand. So are we going to get more taxes as a result of this? Is the town going to get more taxes? Because we've lost a lot of property. We have a big IBM place here that isn't filled. It's not making any money. Our mall locally is going out of business. So I understand that our town supervisor and the board probably would like to find a way to bring more money to our community. But we have become, as has been said, a sustainable community. We have farm to market. You know, our whole community is changing. People are moving from the city. And this doesn't fit that picture. So what is the town getting out of this?
So, first of all, I apologize you don't think we're being honest, because we're trying to be honest, we're trying to be transparent. This is we're holding this because we understood that there were people who were concerned about the project, who opposed the project. This is not required under any of the town's policies or any of the seeker processes. We're doing this because we understood there were people who had questions and concerns and comments. So you don't have to be here. We think everybody who's here is interested in the project and wants to learn about it, which we're trying to share more information. We're hearing your feedback, and trust me, we're going to have a discussion about all of this feedback when we get done. But we want to share this information. And we do think, and I understand there's points to discuss, we do think it advances incrementally towards lowering carbon emissions in New York. So that's what we think.
But not here.
Yeah, so it depends on how broad you want to look. On the tax parcels we're on, it does change the emission profile. That's true. So anyways, we think that's that. So I think that we're not trying to greenwash this or anything. We think this is truly what we think. And so we're not trying to spin anyway.
I think the point well taken in terms of your graphics with the solar panels and the wind turbines. There's nothing like that going on in these projects.
I mean, right, yeah, that stuff doesn't apply here. You can take those words out, they don't mean anything.
So I mean, that's gratuitous graphics that is trying to influence your project in terms of our perception of it.
So what we're trying to do with those graphics, so those graphics are on the first slide talking about our company. And so our company does all of this.
But
Not doing it
that's not
here.
this project.
So there's no solar on this slide.
No, we see the gas supplied and we see the backup diesel. That is not wind and that is not solar.
Right.
Right.
That's true. So we're not trying to.
Some of us get a sense that you're being a bit divisive with your graphics.
I think if we got through the entire presentation, you see that as we got into project details, we were very open about what we're doing. We've only gotten to slide 11. So we're getting there.
Out of how many?
Pure question.
15 maybe.
Can you tell us what the backup fuel would be?
Ultra low sulfur diesel. Ultra low sulfur diesel.
Where does it come from?
The diesel fuel
That you'll be using?
From the pipeline system. So we will buy it and it'll be delivered to the sites. We're not putting any sort of petroleum pipelines in. We'll buy it from the market and deliver it.
But I'm saying back it up from the pipeline, where does it originate from? And how did it get to be?
So, petroleum in the US, oil, gasoline, diesel, natural gas, for the most part, is a combined network system. So, oil and other products go in, and they come out. And you can't buy gas from one place or another. It all comes from the same system. So the gas for your cars, all that stuff all comes from a network system for the most
So
part.
it could be fracked in North Dakota.
This project would not qualify for that storage mandate because it's not a pure storage project. It's this hybrid system.
So you're right, the rules haven't been clarified, but currently, again, the law, this project wouldn't qualify.
So are you seeking incentives under that program? Is that part of what's making this cost effective?
So right now, we don't think we're required, we don't think those incentives are required for the project to work.
I'm just curious, if New York thinks that pure storage projects are going to be built in response to that incentive, why you can't be one of those projects here
So
at this site?
I don't know, so the rules haven't been clarified. I don't know if the intent of that law is only for pure storage projects. I think projects like this are part of what they're thinking is going to happen. I mean, the rules have come up, but I think that's from where we've heard or we've read that they're looking at a whole bunch of energy storage. Some of it will be standalone, some will be paired with solar or wind, and some will be paired with thermal generation.
And so when you say that a pure standalone storage project wouldn't be feasible at this site, do you think that mandate is not going to produce any pure storage projects?
No, I think it
because they're
will.
not cost effective anywhere? Is there something special about this site?
I think pure storage today, if you're to build pure storage today, which others have done, it's been in more dense areas where there isn't the land available, or isn't the air permitting doesn't allow for additional thermal generation.
So it's because this is not a densely populated hydro area that you can build an air emitting project here.
It complies with the regulations for this area, that's right. Yeah, you have your question.
I'm just going to throw it out to the committee here. I see a lot of customers buying solar generation up Kingston, New York. I wouldn't be opposed to buying land and building a 20 to 75 megawatt solar farm, going green and giving a battery solution to it. Just think about it. I'll give you
Excuse me, what's the life expectancy on these batteries? And, excuse me, when these batteries do expire or if they, say so, malfunction, how do you dispose of these batteries? We all know household batteries are specific with instructions. We're talking about a much larger battery.
Yeah, so 2 questions there. The life of the batteries. So the life of the project is, there's 2 components. I'm going to answer 2 different answers, related but different. So the life of the bulk of the project, the civil infrastructure, the electrical infrastructure, the transformers, those sorts of things, the engines, are the 20 to 30 year life. The battery modules themselves have a shorter life. We think the manufacturers right now are projecting a 10-year life before you have to start replacing cells. And you're right, these aren't alkaline batteries, so they're not like a Duracell battery. They're a different technology with lithium ion. They're like the batteries in a cell phone, laptop, those sorts of things. They're not landfillable batteries, but there are recycling programs that exist, and manufacturers who make these systems have recycling programs that allow you to send the batteries back and recycle them, and I assume that part of our permit will require us to dispose of them properly.
So you'll have somebody manning this 24 hours a day to be sure that
They'll be electronically monitored, and it won't be 24 hours a day. We can get a lot of information.
monitoring that on that.
So there'll be a system of automated alarms. So if they deviate from where they're supposed to be, there'll be alarms that go off at our control center.
We're going to hear them? Are they loud alarms? If an alarm goes off in our neighborhood, it's pretty.
Sorry, I misspoke. So it'll send an alarm message. So there won't be an audible alarm. It'll alert our operators that there is a problem, and depending on what the problem is, they'll react. Whether it's shutting the system down,
somebody from Minnesota or Chicago immediately to the site.
So what we'll do is we'll shut down that part of the facility.
Yeah, fail safe.
Okay, moving on. So here's the site itself, and here are the kind of the major components. So we have the engine system. just located here. It'll be in a building that's industrial, it'll fit into the surroundings, so it'll be a green or brown colored building. Well, it is. Metal clad building, it'll be insulated to prevent noise from escaping from the building, and it'll be about 30 feet tall. And then that'll be the engine systems. There'll be a control, a small control room for people when they're on site to operate the facility. We'll have maintenance and offices, that sort of thing. Over here we'll have our exhaust system, which others have pointed out. Right now we're forecasting between it'd be a single stack system, so one stack with kind of two pipes in it, and that'll be anywhere from 60 to 80 feet tall, 60 to 80 feet tall. We're still working through the details of that, but that's what we're currently forecasting. That's the engine system.
What about the fire water storage tank? What's that?
That's the, sorry,
The fire water storage tank?
yes,
What's that for?
fire water.
Meaning,
So we will store, so we'll have a water supply,
right,
but we will also have water on site in case that water supply isn't sufficient.
sufficient for what?
So if there's a fire,
Oh, so that you have to really be set up for the potential of a fire.
yeah, we want to make sure that there's multiple
Okay.
ways to fight a fire on the site,
Okay.
not just relying on the hydrants.
Okay, and after that water comes down or out or wherever, where does it go after that? Does it seep into our ground?
The fire water?
Yeah.
I guess, we can, I don't know. It'll be part of our, we'll look at it as part of our stormwater plan. Hey, so that's a great question. I mean, I can make an answer up if you want, but I don't know. We'll look into it though.
And will there be a person on site all times?
No.
No, it's not even employed.
So how many employees will this employ?
Four.
Including
Four.
Full-time?
Yeah, 4 FTEs. So over here, we got the battery system, 9 to 11 containers, like we showed there on the Growth pad, and some inverters that convert the batteries from AC to DC, or DC to AC, and back again. And they'll be all connected, this will be connected together underground with some cabling. And then these are kind of the support facilities, so the electrical connection between these two systems combined here at the grid connection site, and that's where we connect to the Central Hudson electric grid system. Over here is where the gas supply will come into the site and be metered into the site. And here is the backup fuel with its containment system.
Can you just back up a second? You said
Yes.
something about the Central Hudson grid system.
Yes.
You happen to run in parallel to the Central Hudson grid system main that goes through Ulster County. Would that have any bearing on where your project is?
Yes,
Or-
that is exactly one of the reasons why we chose the site.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so that is the site. Now we're backing up a little bit. Do you have questions? Yes.
This is about the... What street is the gate on?
I have a map and a few slides of a larger zoomed out, and I'll show you there. Is that all right? Okay.
Yes, Peter, this is a question about the site. I think if we were to have this, and I think it's pretty clear from everyone here that we don't want that, and you made a business decision that you could really compete in this market. Gentleman back there says he could compete with solar and backup. I certainly would like to hear that. That sounds very beautiful. But anyway, you're going to be purchasing 121 acres.
Yes.
Putting 3 parcels together and using 4 of them in the middle of the woods, coming in from Franks-O'Tile Boulevard.
Yep.
And I know you say this is off Franks-O'Tile Boulevard. It's actually off of Risley Road. It's closer to Risley Road.
Yes.
That's right.
We wouldn't go through Risley Road because it goes through a residential area. 4 acres, as I, reading the environmental assessment form, is in both OM, Office of Manufacturing, and residential.
Yep.
So it's in both. How could it be in both, in other words, in residential, and have a commercial purpose? That's number one. Second is where I'm wondering, what happens to the other 117 acres? Very concerned about that. The other is, and it had come up here, is a question of safety. And I think you said have this water tank and so forth. If there was an external threat, you have an unmanned facility, you have 4 FTEs, but it's going to be mostly unmanned. if there is an external threat, like a fire within this forest, which this is in the middle, this could be really quite catastrophic before it even gets to this facility. I think we would oppose this if this were on even the east side of Frank Sotile Boulevard.
Yep.
You know, we don't like the idea. This really makes no sense to me from a safety perspective. I can't see how our local firefighters or police, this is vandalism, accident, forest fire, in the middle of that, of course, which affects the people who are closest to this. These are the neighbors on Risley and Ledge Road, which were many of us are living. We're not a bunch of dyspeptic NIMBYs. We would oppose this no matter where it is, even if it were on the east side. But you chose this because it's convenient to you from a business perspective. I get it. It's near the gas, it's near the power lines. If you want to cross, you could still get to it. You know, if you were on the other side of Sotile Boulevard, we still think that would be a bad idea. This really is a terrible idea from that perspective, from the point of view of safety especially. You have 50,000 gallons of diesel fuel there at any given time. That, you know, accidents happen. And I know that even on the EAF there was no hunting in there, but everybody in this room knows that hunting is there. You know, stray bullets, we all know this. Even if you have signs on no hunting, there's hunting. So there are people there. And vandals could access this in a way, even if you had cameras 360 degrees, and they could really escape unnoticed by any authorities. So I think it's a sitting duck. I mean, from your perspective, you got to consider that.
Yeah, I mean, you think that, so. Those are all things to be, those are concerns we share. I mean, we're not gonna build a facility that we think puts anybody in danger. And I think there's discussion about what that constitutes, but I think, you know, like we wouldn't do that. I don't think any reasonable developer would do that. I don't think that a reasonable town would let that happen. I think there is this band of what that means, right? And I think that we are working to design the plant, and as we design the plant, part of that will be security, will be fire prevention, fire response, spill prevention, spill response. Nothing at this site is unique. It's unique here. I mean, this is new here. I understand that point, but there parts of the project that exist. None of that is unique at all, and there are ways that people have developed to mitigate the risks. You know, it'd be irresponsible to say there's zero risk, because that's not true, right? There's risk of all sitting in the room today of some things happening. But we think that it's reasonable we think that there are ways to mitigate the risks down to a reasonable measure. We haven't developed those plans yet, we haven't done those studies, but we plan to do those and share them prior to finalizing the project's permits, if we get that.
Could you just kind of real briefly about the mixed zoning and the 117 acres?
Yeah, so 117 acres, I think it's actually, when you put it all together, it's closer to 120 something? It's about 121.
Altogether.
121, you got these little side parcels here that are part of it. The really short answer is that's what the owner was willing to sell us. So one owner owns all of it, they didn't want us to parse it out, they wanted to sell the whole thing. So we started there, right? What was available was all three parcels together. We think that's a reasonable thing. We think the transaction negotiated with the owners. That's what we did. We've agreed with the town to designate the remainder of the project forever green. We assume that part of our permit conditions will require that, which means that we won't be able to develop it, and if we sell the project, that'll be controlled development. So that right now anybody can build here. I mean, obviously, if we get the permits and that sort of thing. But we're thinking we're obviously developing our project, which we've been discussing for the last 2 hours. But we think that we're getting the rest of it to be forever green, which does at least provide some certainty about future development not happening around the site. For zoning, sorry, I'm still answering questions. From a zoning perspective, you're right, it is two different zones. The way the town looks at it, the way I understand it, is that it's by parcel, so the part of the property that we're in is zoned appropriately for our project. but it is, as you point out, adjacent to residential zones, which I don't think would allow this project in those zones. But the part we're in is zoned for what we're doing. Yes?
In reference to what you said about the fire departments and emergency responders, I mean, we're Town of Ulster. We're volunteer firefighters. I'm a nurse. We are strained as it is. Now you're saying that, you know, our fire department is responsible for it, and God forbid there is something that leaks and we have these health hazards and issues, which, you know, realistically will happen. What are you going to do for us to assure us that we will have the proper response, emergency responders? I mean, then our taxes go up because now we need more emergency responders. We need more volunteer people. We have a great fire department surrounding us, and they are volunteer members that sacrifice their lives and put their families on hold. And, you know, even our town employees are volunteers. I'm a volunteer. What are you going to do to make sure that we're still protected and we're not running so scarce?
So I think when I know our response plan, our emergency planning, the first step is obviously prevention. So we're going to do a lot to prevent anything from happening. Prevention's not 100%, we have to acknowledge that, so we'll plan for if our prevention doesn't work.
What is your prevention plan?
So we haven't, that's what I'm saying, we haven't developed that. We will develop it prior to.
How about we don't want a project that needs an emergency plan?
I've heard that response. So we think that the first line of response is on site. So we will have, for the most part, automated systems in place.
You said 4 employees, 24 hours a day. It's not going to be.
I'm trying to answer your question.
Okay, sorry.
So we will have automated systems in place. They'll be the first plan. So the idea is that if there is a incident, that our systems will respond automatically and immediately by themselves, without an employee there, but they'll monitor heat detection, fire detection, all that kind of stuff, and they'll respond immediately the minute to either remove the risk or minimize its increasing. And then we'll have broader emergency systems on site so that if those initial mitigation measures don't work, we'll have, you know, like our halon systems in the containers, we'll have, you know, other large fire suppression systems in the facility itself as our second on-site prevention measure. And then, after both those measures are there, that is when then we work with the locals, and we will make sure they are trained, and we'll answer their questions and make sure they feel that
They're already excellent trained.
Yes.
They're highly qualified and trained, as we are, but you're not giving us more manpower. Are you going to employ more staff up there to make sure that your staff is trained for an emergency situation so that our firefighters don't go and they're not occupying more time, and they're not wasting our time with you?
So I think, let us develop our plans, let us share our plans, and we think that we'll be able to show with our plans that additional staff, additional resources are not needed for the local fire department. But let us get those plans out and we can discuss where the gaps are if there are gaps for that. But I understand what you're saying, and I think our intent is not to unduly burden the local emergency responders. I think we can do it without doing that.
They should be included in your plan, don't you think?
Yeah, we will. We'll include them. I mean, that's part of our planning process, coordinating with those departments, those agencies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't quite hear, I think this question was asked earlier, but I didn't hear the answer. Were other sites considered in the town of Ulster and outside the town of Ulster for this area?
Yes, we looked at lots of sites. Many we discarded because there were various reasons why they wouldn't work. So the prior reasons were they either didn't have the gas or electric systems on site. So we acknowledge you could build a project without having them on site, but that increases the amount of real estate needed to develop with more linear facilities which have their own issues. So we decided to focus on sites that had both utilities on site.
So you did not consider other sites?
I haven't finished answering the question, so I'll get there. We have. I'm telling you the process we went through and the sites we looked at and what we did to screen out sites and why we think this is, of all the sites we looked at, this is the best one. So I'm working through it. So it has the utilities on site. It also has a minimal amount of wetlands and compared to the other sites we looked
Native
at.
American architecture in there also.
So compared to the other sites we looked at, it doesn't have as many wetlands. It doesn't have significant wetlands, and it has what our interest here was is that the wetlands that are on site, there are wetlands on site. We've delineated them. We have them in maps.
So you're talking about this site I asked you about other sites. Did you look at other places?
Yes, we did.
Where did you look?
First of all, I'm not going to tell you where we looked because you could someone else go develop those sites and compete with us. We did look at other sites. We'll talk about the process we went through, but we're not disclosing all the places we looked at because that's part of our proprietary information. We did look at other sites. Did you have more background on that?
I'm the director of real estate, so it's my responsibility to identify the land. It's a Venn diagram. Gas, electric, zoning, a willing seller at a reasonable price. That's the search. I searched throughout the Hudson River Valley. This one made the most sense to us, and that's why we chose it. That's why we opted.
In your research, did it also indicate how it's going to affect the property values?
No. Listen, I'm a certified commercial investment member of the Commercial Investment Real Estate. I've done a lot of research on the nature of how projects impact property values. If you show me a study, I'd be happy to review it.
I mean, I appreciate you guys are the businessmen, it is your business, you're here to support that. But when you did all your gas lines, electrical, all this other stuff, this is in a residential area. Any consideration as far as to the community and the impact of our property values?
So our opinion, in our view, and I think that when we get through everything, we can talk through stuff, we think the impacts will be minimal.
I don't believe so.
If you show us a study, we'll be happy to look at it.
Yeah, so I think we will talk about why we think the impacts are minimal, and that's part of the work we'll do. Yes.
So I'm sure, as you're aware, there's a principal aquifer running underneath the property. Do you know who gets their water from that and how they'll be affected if there is a
So on our list, we have work to do to study the impacts of the aquifer. We haven't finished that work. When it's done, we'll share it. Okay, moving on. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
Since you said this is pretty much, you haven't made a decision whether to go forward. All of our opinions, you said, do account for whether you will go forward. Could you humor me before the end of this meeting and take a poll and see if there is, so you're as a businessman and all of you involved in doing your study, humor me and take a poll so you are well informed of who wants this project to raise their hand in the room to see, because that would be, as a business person.
I don't think that's going to advance the conversation. I think it's been very
Really?
clear.
Well, then, our opinions do count, correct?
Yeah. I'm not going to count them though. I think that
Well, if
it'll be a low number.
Why don't we do it ourselves?
Interesting.
How many
people are interested?
At this
Anybody?
point, based on this information, would oppose this power plant?
Oppose it?
How many oppose it?
How about the opposite?
Okay, moving on. So that's not a surprise. What's that?
Where does the energy come from the battery? So the batteries have to be charged somehow. So where does that energy come from?
So it comes from either the grid, and I think we think that at least half the time we'll charge off the grid, and it'll come from the gas
On the
generator.
grid, if you're choosing it on the grid, that power may be coming from a fossil fuel source, correct?
It actually, frankly, will probably come from a wind or a solar project, because we'll charge when the grid prices are low, and usually in New York, the grid prices are the lowest when it's windy at night.
All right.
So it comes back to-
That's fine. So now when you release that energy from that battery, are you calculating that into your statistics on emissions?
No, so the emissions calculations is a per megawatt hour calculation, and it does not account for the batteries. So it's the worst case scenario is generating from our generator per megawatt hour. That's the emissions that we're talking about. Okay, so going back here. Okay, so let's see.
Okay, go back to that other floor.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to. Don't worry. So we didn't really talk about this slide. So this is, I'll get to the next one. No, I'm not trying to.
No,
so
I know.
Here's zooming in, locating this a little more in case you didn't know where we are. So here is Hudson Valley Mall. Here's Route 9W, Route 32, Frank Sotil. Here's Kohl's, Home Depot, right there. I don't know what that is. Lone Star Steakhouse. Here's Sunrise Park.
Yeah, there we are. That's our neighborhood.
I bet you thought I was going to skip that, didn't you? No, it's right there. And so that's where we're at, right? And this is the site right here. we say it's off of Frank Sotil Boulevard. I understand what you're saying, that when you're doing kind of as the crow flies, it's not the closest place. Our driveway's gonna be on Frank Sotil Boulevard, so we'll say it's there, but here's the map, this is where it is. There's a distance here, I think it's 700, I think it's 735, but it's on the map back there, the exact number. So that's from the edge of our fence corner, to the property line of the nearest residential property.
680.
It's not 680.
What's in your proposal?
I think we've made the pad smaller, so it's farther away. This is our current design. So
It's 700, it's still close to
Yeah, no, it's-
Sue's house.
I mean, I've been saying, like, I think our original proposal, right, was in the 600s. We've worked to move this, make the pad smaller, move it. So it's, but I mean, it's a little closer. Still in the town. Yeah. So here's the site, okay, and we tried to color this to make it easily identifiable. So the green is areas that we are undeveloped, the areas we're not developing. They're currently mostly forested or shrubs. The wetlands, the blue areas here, these lighter, this kind of color blue, are the wetlands on site. We have done an on-site wetland delineation, so these are the actual wetlands as delineated by a wetland guy or gal. And this green, light green here, is the right-of-way for Central Hudson's electric line. The yellow line here, this yellow area, is the right-of-way for Central Hudson's underground gas line. Those facilities both exist. These dashed here things are how we're connecting to those. This white thing is the road. Someone earlier asked about gates. We'll probably have at least 2 gates, one down here. We'll design this so that if someone can pull off without getting right to the gate, we'll have a gate preventing people from driving up to the site when it's unmanned, and then there'll probably be a gate right here as well. Obviously, we'll work with the fire department, make sure they have access and all that kind of stuff. And then, let's see, oh yeah, these lighter blue areas, these kind of aqua areas are the stormwater retention and the infiltration areas. So these are the areas that we're building to take stormwater from the project, let it infiltrate. But yeah, those are our manufactured wetlands. And then we'll have one wetland crossing right here. This is this road over, we'll probably do with the open bottom culvert, I think. And that's the site. So that's this is the same footprint here as you saw there. It's just now on the map. And this is, so we're saying from here is where we're 7-something away. And this will be on our website, so if you want to download a high-resolution version of this, you will be more than free to. Yeah.
Okay, you're building on the top of that ridge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And if you put water on the top of a ridge, you know where it goes, right?
Down the ridge.
Well, so we are designing these.
Well, what I want to know is how you're going to get it to go into those retention areas without it going, it naturally goes down.
Yeah, so every development project plans for stormwater, and there's very advanced modeling that can figure out how the stormwater is going to flow. We'll do rates, we'll do final site grading to ensure the stormwater goes to where it's supposed to go.
There's also a stream down at the bottom of that ridge that
Yeah.
empties into the Esopus
Yep.
Creek and
Yep.
then empties into the Hudson River.
Yeah. So stormwater is an important part of every project, and we will have a very robust stormwater management plan, and I'm confident we can show how we'll make sure the stormwater goes where we want it to go and not where we don't want it to go. And that's a part of every project. The town is very experienced at reviewing those things. There's engineers that are very experienced at designing stormwater systems. It's not unique at all to our project. Every site has challenges. We think we can show how it's going to go where we want it to go.
And is
So we'll show you.
that away from us? Because I have stormwater drains on my property, and I don't want it feeding back to me. I
No,
already
it's-
did condo water.
No, we're not going to have any stormwater going anywhere besides on our property. That's why we're building these infiltration ponds, that stormwater is collected, infiltrates into the groundwater where we're supposed to go. Okay, moving on. More questions about that?
Is this project going to expand eventually, or is this the?
So the footprint that we're designing for is, we've already agreed with the town, is that we will work with the town to designate the rest of the project area as forever green or undeveloped. So we'll have our footprint that's permitted, the rest of the site, 100 and change acres, we will commit to not develop, and the town won't let us develop it after that.
Excuse me, Peter, but it is
Huh?
forever green right now.
It's not restricted.
But
That's
no,
why we can
it's
develop it.
forever green. You're talking about putting up projects that are going to make it's like a
It's not forever
amusement
green.
park. It is already.
It's not restricted right now. It's private property with no restrictions on it, from a forever green
Oh,
standpoint.
so
we're offering to
this is
put
in
the,
term. I apologize.
yeah, so we're offering to put those legal restrictions on the property going forward. So after our project, the rest of 100 acres, which now can be developed for anything, is going to be restricted. Okay, so studies, so here's the studies that we're either planning or have completed. We will make sure all of these studies get made available when they're finalized. None of them are final yet, so we're still working on it, but we plan to study all of these areas. I'm not going to go through these right now because they're on our website, they'll be here, but we're planning to do a very robust study. If there are other studies that people think we should do, let us know from the cards, tell us, we'll look at doing them, but we think this will provide a comprehensive picture of the project when it's done. So far, I'm not even going to say it. No, so far, everything we're seeing, we don't think anything that meets the significant impact threshold under New York secret law will exist, but we're still studying it and we'll put that up here. But I understand other hearers have different opinions, so let's leave it there. Like I said, studies we made available, so our intent is to, via our project website, to make sure that once a study's been finalized in the final form, we'll put it on the website for others to look at. The town will obviously have a copy of it. We'll try to make sure we share all of that with it. We're using, we're using expert consultants to do it, so it's not just Chris and I doing studies. We're hiring experts that have done studies here before to do their studies. We're hosting these volunteer open houses. We'll host more of these as people have questions. We want to try to have a discussion, understanding that we have different opinions of the project, but we want to try to make sure we're available to you. We'll have ongoing outreach. We have a mailing list of people who are either adjacent or within the Sunrise Park neighborhood. We have those addresses, so if you got a letter or postcard from us, we already have your address. If you want us to stop sending you stuff, let me know, we will, but if you don't, we'll continue to send you things until you tell us to stop. If you want to be on our list for mailing or for email, please sign in here or fill a card out or call us or email us. We're happy to add anyone who wants to be on our list onto our list, and we'll keep you informed about the project as we have major developments. Yeah.
When did you start talking about this project with the town of Ulster?
In November.
Just this past November?
Yep. This is where we consider ourselves early in the development process.
And how does this forum figure into your business model, or was it at the suggestion of the town of Ulster?
So we worked with the town of Ulster and we discussed it. We wanted to make sure that we got public comment early in the process. We can still make changes before we committed to certain parts of the project. So this is not required. The town, us and the town decided to do it together because we thought it was a good forum for people to come and talk about the project versus a formal public town meeting, which we'll have as we get through the permit process. We thought we'd do this in advance to provide a more informal opportunity for us to hear the comments. Okay, Town of Ulster is the lead under CERCA. Yeah, did you something?
Some of the media that covered this indicated combined heat and power, CHP. Okay, then that was not true. Okay, thank you.
Oops, back up. So yeah, Town of Ulster is the CEQA lead, and in addition to all the stuff we're doing to put information out there, there is a whole regulatory public participation process that we can tell you about, or the town can tell you about, where you have a legal right to participate. This is all in addition to that. So next steps, we'll wrap it up here, and I might need to take a drink of water, but then we'll be around for questions after that. So we really want to hear your comments. We've heard a lot today. I understand a lot of people here have no interest in the project at all being built and want to convince us otherwise. We're happy to hear more about why you're concerned about the project, we want to know your questions, that kind of stuff. Talk to us in person, but a better way to convey your thoughts and questions of the project is let us know in writing so we can make sure we have a record of it and we can respond to it. So we have comment cards, we have an email address. Talk to us tonight as much as you want, but please do provide it that way either now, tonight on these comment cards, or by email to us. That way we can make sure we don't forget about it, because there'll be a lot of folks who talk to you tonight and it's going to be a busy night. And then studies and updated plans, as we have them finalized, we'll put them on the website. So we're always making minor adjustments, and then we have major revisions, we'll post them to our website. That's the place to look for the latest and greatest. Questions?
Just a comment. And you were asking whose idea was this in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And you said it was both. In the EAF C2, it was written that the town suggested this site to you.
I'll have to look at that. That's not what happened. The
Well,
town.
that's what's on the board. You're the applicant.
Yeah, let's look at that together, because I don't think that's true. So it's either put it on the EAF, which I hope didn't happen,
It did.
or yeah, we'll look at it. I mean, I think we can look at it with the town and see
Okay.
what happens. But it was a site that, as Mike
No,
described.
because it doesn't make you not the applicant, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's just like, where did this originate?
Yeah, so that's really confusing, just to make it clear.
Me too.
Yeah, we'll look at that, because I think as Mike described, we had a process that was completely organic ourselves to
Yeah,
find
sure.
these sites, so I don't know.
I'm just expanding on the question.
Yeah, when did you identify this site within your company?
I mean, we started looking out here a couple of years ago, and started looking at sites. It didn't work economically then, so we kind of waited on it. And now, as better technologies come around, we've found this is the right time to come here. So we've known about the site for a while. We haven't actively been developing it, which is we haven't had this discussion because we've now started actively developing the site. But it's been
And
our
you haven't
portfolio.
had conversations with the Town of Ulster prior to November?
We've had informal conversations like any applicant would understand what their zoning rules are and that sort of stuff, but, like a developer, we have portfolio sites all over, and so we don't, this meeting wouldn't have been very useful if we knew for a fact we weren't going to advance development. In November was when we decided to start advancing development of the project, which is why we made our first application to the town and initiated the formal process with the town, and then started these conversations. So we have that's the origination of how this all happened.
But how long have you been talking to the town about potential?
I think we've
I
had.
think our initial conversation was right before we signed the option, but again, we option a lot of land. We don't develop every project.
And when did you option the land?
2015 or 16?
Yeah, it's in the public, I mean, it's recorded. It's recorded.
Yeah, it's a recorded document.
Yeah.
What's the decision-making process? How does the final decision get made?
Is there a Circa expert? Secra, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, there's local land use approvals and then seeker findings that need to be made consistent with that. So there's a number of permits. There's also DEC permits that have to be issued, and so there'll be local and state permits that will be needed for the project. And I think one Army Corps permit.
Is the town giving this a positive declaration under seeker or a negative declaration?
They haven't made a decision yet.
Well, that's a big
Supervisor
decision.
Quigley stated publicly that there would be a positive declaration.
Okay,
It's
so
not
that would be-
formal, but he stated publicly.
Okay, so,
Excuse me, one more question. When, in your business plan, when are you thinking that you're going to be breaking ground?
well, I mean, we have to get a permit first. So I think once we have permits, it's probably a 9 to 12 month construction cycle once we have all the permits.
So it will take 9 to 12 months to complete it, but, right? Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
But when is the 9-month beginning?
So once we have all of our permits,
Once you
we
have all
know.
the permits.
Yeah, once we know for sure the project can get built, we can't build with a permit, so we.
Your projections.
Yeah, and well, in New York, this process is very unpredictable. So I think we don't know when it's gonna be done. I think if you look at the rules, it could be done in a few months. But because there'll probably be public involvement, it may take longer, so I don't know.
See, that's what doesn't feel like straight up, because there's so many projections you've given us on these screens, which you don't really know about. But yet you're not
I mean,
directly...
I can tell you an answer, but I'm telling you I don't know for sure. I think
you
we
could
could
be
say.
starting this project in 3 months for all we know.
I think, so first of all, we don't think we can start on-site construction until at least November of 2018.
Which is not,
11
months from now.
Right, but we can't do that until we have permits.
I
So if we don't get
understand.
permits, we can't do that.
Thank you for answering my question.
So that's where we're at, but
That
that's
answers
the
my
earliest we can do, yeah, okay. So, it's,
We got questions,
Peter. Yeah. Okay, let me just I'm just gonna check where I'm at, and I'll answer your question, I promise. Hold on a second. Okay, yes.
My house is directly across from the entrance of the wooded area on Risley Street.
Yep.
When there's downpours of rain, we have 2 basins out front. Once they fill, they can't go further through the old piping that's there because that was never expanded. So what's going to happen now, when you're going to build in there, and the water already has no place to go.
So we're not planning to change any of the landscape that abuts that development. So I don't think the water will change. We can look at it if that's a concern.
But you're not going, the drain pipe, I'm calling it, under the ground, has never changed. They never changed that. They took more basins. The water's got no place to go. The problem is in the land across the problem is because it wasn't pitched right many years ago.
So we plan to design our facility to contain all of the stormwater on our site. And there's guidelines on how to do that, and we plan to follow those and have them in our stormwater plans.
But is your building preparation gonna do
No.
something to the,
Where you're talking, I think you're talking about up by the housing development, we don't plan to have any earthwork anywhere close to that.
well, it's back further where the water's, there's a little pond back in there.
Yeah, we don't, so none of our, this is a bad idea. So none of our, so beyond this white area and this, so this area plus the batteries here, we don't plan to have any significant earthwork outside of there. We'll have some related to storm retention here and probably some in between, but we're not going to be reshaping anything in here, for example. We're not going to have any impacts there with the on-the-ground equipment. Yes?
Are you planning on building on a slab or are you going to blast?
We're planning right now to use a slab. I think we are still finishing our geotechnical reports, which will determine that for sure, but nothing that we need to do needs to go all that deep, so I don't think blasting is required. And the data we have so far does not indicate blasting is required. Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that there are so many comments in this room, so many really important questions that once this goes ahead to the seeker process, I think everybody in this room has the potential to make comments that will have to be responded to by the DEC. If it was only comments from the people in the room, hundreds and hundreds of comments would be generated. So I'm just saying, let's all remember all the questions that are being raised about the potential harm that this project could be to your house, to general, so that we, stay energized and make sure those comments are submitted during the seeker process. So I'm sure organizers will be letting everyone know how to do that.
Yeah,
The one good thing that is happening here, we have a positive deck under seeker. Your questions, anybody's questions will be written down and they will be addressed not only by the DEC, but by the company.
Right.
And this is gonna come out in a finding statement. And if your question is not, if you write it in and give it to them and it's not there, you can object at that point in time. So that process will, that's a big thing that the town has done, because up until 5 years ago, we never saw a positive declaration in the town of Ulster. And our leaders now have seen the light, so to speak, and his positive declaration is a good step forward. I'm not saying that the power plant is a good thing, but, and just to correct you, it could be 5 years before you stop, because the last time I did a secret process to stop a bad project, we stopped it for 5 years. So just keep the tenacity here.
Yes,
By
yeah,
their
yeah,
project alone will just be profitable and they can ditch the gas for 5 years.
I mean, I've worked with wind projects in Western New York that have 7-8 year secret processes.
So just be prepared. It's a long.
It's interesting that both projects have the same volume of comments. Okay, so this is we've gone through this. Here is our website, and like I mentioned, the slide deck from tonight. Our posters will be up there tonight at some point, and all our contact information is there. You can contact us that way. You can say after all kind of stuff. We're trying to at least answer your questions. You may not like our answers, but we're trying to answer your questions and respond to them. That's the best way to do it.
One thing I could ask if at the next informational meeting you have more exact figures. I know you have a process to go through, but I had asked, I think I talked to you, Peter. I'd asked about emissions. You don't have those. They're very important to this group.
We're trying to evolve, so we're trying to have meetings early on.
That's what